Are we going to jump back to a math question now?
Perfect. Jump back to math. Kick it back to you guys, math people.
Okay, so this one is about a manufacturing plant. Manufacturing plant can machine parts at a rate of 7 parts every 3 minutes. If the plant continues to produce parts at this rate, how many machine parts will be produced in 3.5 hours?
Okay, so I'm just writing some of that information down. So we want to know, so this machine can machine parts, 7 parts every 3 minutes, whatever these parts are. And if they can produce parts at this rate, we want to know how much they can produce in 3.5 hours. All right. So I have a way that I normally would do this, but after being on this show for the last year, I've seen kind of a way that Becca does it that I think is a little bit more clear. Oh. So I think I've learned a little bit about how to set this up a little bit more clearly. I typically would do something like 7 divided by 3 times 60 times 3.5, and I feel like that can be a little confusing. So I'm going to try Becca's way of explaining this. So please feel free to interject if I'm messing it up.
Sounds good.
Or if it's not very clear.
Sure. I'm sure it'll be great.
Because you do it like kind of proportions, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to try to do. I usually just say how many can they do in a minute. I convert it into an hour, which is really
so you do a unit rate and then you project a unit rate.
But I like the way that you do it because it looks fancy. All right. So we're going to set up a proportion. Every 3 minutes, 7 parts are machined. So we could say 7 parts for every 3 minutes. I'm unfortunately not going to write as neatly. So that's one of the proportions. And we're saying that we can do this every 3 minutes. And in the end, we want to know how many we can create in 3.5 hours. So we kind of want to convert these minutes into hours. So times, I'm going to say 60 minutes for every 1 hour. Right? That's how you would set it up, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we have this proportion. We have 7 parts for every 3 minutes, and we have 60 minutes for every 1 hour. And we can kind of just multiply. We just talked about dividing fractions. And Becca mentioned multiplying fractions. You just multiply straight across.
And the simplifying on the numerator and the denominator before we multiply.
And the simplifying. So we're actually going to simplify first. Like one of the things Becca mentioned was like we had an 11 in the numerator and denominator. We can cancel those out. Well, in this case, we can do that too. And we can think, well, we got minutes here and we got minutes here. So minutes divided by minutes, these would cancel out. We could also simplify further if we wanted to. And we can say I've got 60 up here. Do this in a different color. I'll highlight it. And we've got 3 here. So we can do that division and say now I have 7 parts times 20 minutes. I can make this 20, and I can make this 1. And then we can multiply straight across, and I get 140 parts. Right? So 7 times 20, and I didn't get rid of the parts, so 140 parts for every 1 hour. Right? Mm-hmm. And then, so we figured out how many per hour, and now we can say, well, what are we actually trying to figure out? I want to know how much this plant can make in 3.5 hours. So now I can simply take that 140 parts per hour and multiply it by that 3.5 hours. And you should get, what, 420, 490 parts? Let me double check that with my calculator. 140 times 3.5. Yeah, 490 parts. So that's how you kind of set it up and work that out with proportions. Is there anything that you would explain a little further?
That was perfect.
All right.
And the reason this is so great is because it's hard to know sometimes, are we multiplying or are we dividing? And when are we multiplying and when are we dividing? But if you set it up with the units like that, then you know exactly what you did and what units you're in, and then how to maybe get to exactly what you want.
Another reason why I like this way is a lot of times, you know, in the end, we could say 490 parts per hour, or you could do that divide by hour. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of students don't really understand why we do it like miles divide by hour.
Right.
And setting it up this way with proportions like makes it very clear, like the minutes are canceling themselves out. That's kind of what we're left with.
It's the only way I can make sense of rates and proportion. I know. It's the only way.
So hopefully that helped.
Yeah.